Thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you, Kat, so much for accepting the interview. Avery, thank you so much. How have you guys been?
Pretty good. It's allergy season right now, so trying to get through that. Like doing all of my, do I shower at night? Do I shower in the morning to like wash all of the allergens? I don't know. Yeah, getting through that.
Yeah, things have been good, crazy, but good. I recently made the move out to LA, so I'm really enjoying my time out here. And yeah, happy to be here with you all.
I've been anticipating this interview very much because of the roles you guys play at the end of the series that we're going to touch at the end of this interview. In fact, I stumbled upon this series way back last year, and it's such a series that I hold dear to my heart because it's like so wonderful. It's like it's a slice of life anime, which is my favorite genre, but it's like slow pace, and we'll touch it more on it towards the end of the interview. But before we begin that topic, what was your very first role you guys had in anime?
It was Armed Girls Machiavellism, which is such a goofy, like, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. I was the girl with the purple hair. I don't remember her name.
The first thing I was in, I don't know if I want to talk about it. It was a really small production. It was Spirit of the Sun, I think, and then the Tibetan Dog. And I don't think really got a lot of attention. Dereku was the first kind of like larger part that I got to be in, and then after that was Scum's Wish.
Thus far, though, what are your favorite characters that you've played?
That's a good question. The one that like all across the board is my favorite would probably be Chito in Girls Last Tour. That's such a cool anime. Everything about it, like the story, and I really enjoyed working with Shannon, and Juliet Simmons is amazing and so different from any other show I've watched or been in. And it was also the first big part that I had, and it was huge for me. I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't think I've recorded as many hours to this date on one show as I did that time. So it holds a nice little place in my heart.
I remember that one. That is about the two girls, and it's all dialogue driven, isn't it? So you guys were like had a lot of time together in the booth. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one.
And we talked about like how in like voiceover, we don't really actually interact with the other person. We started that process with me and Juliet in the booth, and it was kind of hard because like we had to put a divider to try to dampen some of the sound, but it was really cool. It took a lot longer because there was just so much like, I don't know, but that was the only time I've ever done that, and it was really cool.
I remember when you guys were recording that, because it was all buzz in the studio that for the first time actors were recording together. That was a big deal. So it's really cool to like hear about your experience and that it was so positive. I'm trying to think. So the question was, what's it for your favorite role? Let me think. Is it okay if I have two?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So one of which was Scum's Wish. That was like the first lead that I'd ever booked. And I did a rookie mistake where whenever you're booking for sessions, it's typically recommended you can do like 4 hours at a time. I did 8 hours at a time. Don't do that. So I hadn't moved to Houston yet. I was commuting, and I'd like take every Friday off to record. I think it was like the most hours I'd ever had on a show too. And I came in and I was like so intimidated because they had like great actors. I think Adam Noble was actually in it. And then there was Molly Searcy. Who else? I think, and then Brittany Karbowski. So there was just a bunch of vets that were in there, and I was green. It was greener than the little plants around my room. And I went in there and I just like so desperately wanted to do a good job. And I remember in the audition process, I tried to put on an anime voice. So growing up watching anime, we hear what we assume we need to sound like. And I actually dealt with a lot of insecurity because I have a deeper pitched voice. So I did that. And Shannon, who is the director, he's like, hey, maybe you don't need to do that. What if we just used your voice? And I was like, okay. And so I wanted a part that ended up going to, Maggie Flecknoe. I thought like, okay, I can do this super sultry character. Yeah, that's mine for sure. I'll never get the lead. There's no way. So when they called me, they're like, I'm really sorry, sweetie. Like the other part, Maggie got it. I was like, okay. They're like, but you got it. I was like, got what? They go, the lead. I was like, what? Like wrong number? Who are you talking to? So yeah, it was great. It was more like on-camera acting, which you don't always get to do in anime. I think that's the fun part of anime, too. Depending on the genre, it can be more fantastical and whimsical, and you can really be goofy with it. But then depending on the nature, it could be more serious. So that was a very, like, grounded performance. And then the other was with Kyle, and that was Princess Principal. I had to do an accent, which is stressful. So as an actor, if someone asks, can you do an accent? You just say yes. Can you do it? And so I did the accent, and they was like, great, cool, we'll call you in later, whatever. And I ended up getting like a background part or something because they were still worrying about the leads. And then I came back and I had a callback for the lead, and it was in front of a bunch of people. It was like a panel. I called them esteemed panel of judges, and they thought that was very funny. Ha ha ha. And I was just stressed out of my mind because, again, I was so green. But those two roles really stand out to me because they challenged me the most, and they were the first kind of foyer into, this is a big deal. Like, I am voice acting. It is not Walla. This is my name in the credits. And so they're very rewarding experiences.
Wow, very interesting stuff here. For the first time, I heard voice actors doing dub together, which again, as we were just saying earlier, it's seldom does that ever happen, if at all. And you, with your roles as with your first experience submitting that 8-hour.
Don't do it, kids. Don't do it.
This is a question regarding for Kat, regarding your character, your lead character in the anime My Teen Romantic Comedy SNAFU. Tell me about your character there.
That's another one. That was one of the 5 that I listed in like the last time someone asked me that question. I could talk about Yui forever. I don't know. Like I'm actually an introvert. I'm actually like fairly like to myself and everything. So to get to play Yui was just kind of a cool experience because I got to have this outlet that I don't usually like. I don't necessarily see myself as I don't know. She's a little dumb. She's a little like ditzy and like in the best way. She's different aspects of me that I identify with, but don't necessarily get to like do on the daily. And as an actor, for me, it was just really fun to have such a carefree, like I got to experience and go through all of the levels of my voice. Like she talks really low and she's really serious, but she can also just go all over and like, I wasn't necessarily doing anime voice. I was like living in my voice, but I got to just use all of the fun inflections that you don't necessarily get to use and like when you're doing a more straightforward anime. And so it was just fun because she would go from like really serious, like talking about her feelings and confronting Kiki about something to like, what? Like, I don't know. She just highs and lows and it was exciting. It was fun for me as an actor.
You really got to explore a lot of ranges of your voice there.
It was just really fun to like let loose and have fun and that part of my career. It wasn't my first big role. It was kind of, I'd had a couple under my belt and I was feeling really confident in myself as an actor now, as a voice actor. And so it was just a really validating experience. And like, that was with John, and John was like, he was always very just affirming and was like, you're doing great. This is awesome work. And I was like, good. Because I didn't know, I couldn't tell before, and now I'm like, oh, great. It was a really good experience. And then Adam Gibbs and Melissa are just really wonderful co-stars. And that's probably, we have a lot of interaction. We've done some interviews together, and like, that was probably the most, like, even though we never saw each other, I really felt like some camaraderie with them. You can like feel each other through the headphones. I heard their voices so often. I was like, yeah, of course, great.
Especially for this anime, just because there's a lot of interaction with the characters between Hachiman and your character Yui and the other cast members as well. There is a scene that I was curious about, and this is because I was researching the series prior to this interview. There's a scene where, in Japanese, the character is arguing with your character Yui, and Hachiman calls her calls her a bitch. But in the English version, that gets translated to another slur. Do you happen to know why, or is it because of the rating?
このビッチめ。
はあ？ビッチってなんだし、私はまだ
Little slut.
What? Who are you calling a slut? I'm still a virgin.
So I think it's a little bit of both. This is one of the questions you sent ahead of time, and I'm glad because I did my research too, because I wouldn't have been able to tell you. But I was just like, I was looking through some of the YouTube comments on a clip where they talk about this specifically, because a lot of people have this question. And apparently in Japanese, bitch and slut actually are really similar. Like, to call someone a bitch in Japanese, excuse my language, it's not even like a slur. It's more of like just explaining that a woman is sexually active. And so it's actually closer to, like to call her a slut is closer to how we like perceive it, as opposed to like in America, calling someone a bitch has a different context. So that, and also probably the rating, we probably wouldn't have been able to get away with it as easily. But that's what I was able to dig up on that.
I wasn't sure if I should ask this question because I'm like, am I the only one curious about this? Because I did not go into the comments.
I was curious when we recorded, and I was like, okay. You just called me a slut, but okay. And I'm like, you're creepy. Like, that was my reaction. I was like, you're just creepy.
This question is for both of you. Tell me about your characters in the series Land of the Illustrious.
That was a fun one. That I think was one of like my earlier ones. Like it was a nice tiny little chunk of a role for me. I was just excited to be in this cool show. Like there was a lot of buzz about Land of the Illustrious around the studio at that time because it just was beautiful. And for me, like it was just, I had a few tidbits and I was able to kind of the same thing, go all over the place. She's like this fashionista, and I thought of it as when I did it, I reminded it myself of Jessie from Pokemon, where she's just like, oh my gosh, like why are you wearing this?
I woke up early to finish it, but it's gone. I just got an extra day extension to work on it too. Oh, this is bad. I slimmed down the collar by 1/100th of the usual, giving it a more elegant form.
And so it's fun.
That's really wonderful to hear because I was like, Red Barrel. She was the fashion one. But as Cinnabar, that character rarely interacts with anyone other than Foss. And then I think Diamond at one point. But exactly what Kat said, there's buzz all around the studio about Land of the Lustrous, and I so desperately wanted to be a part of it. And I remember they had the audition sides all out, and I was excited. I was like leafing through all of them. And the one character I was convinced I was not going to get was Cinnabar, because I was just like, this character is so intense, and they have such a depth to them. And again, I was very new. And so I read a little bit of the manga at the time, which is excellent. I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to read something that they're not going to expect where it ends up. But the audition process was exciting because there's a scene, I think in episode 1, where Cinnabar throws their Mercury out in this like massive wave. And it was the first time I got to do kind of like an action-esque within an anime. This audition, I had to like put my whole force into it. And I remember, I never told anyone this, I was trying so hard to impress Kyle that I strained too hard when I was doing my effect, and I pulled a muscle in my butt. So it paid off, obviously. Land of the Lustrous paid off. That's how you get it, kids. You just pull a butt muscle. But yeah, and so he was like, that was great. I'm like, so good. And yeah, so when I got the call about Cinnabar, I was so excited. And I even got like little enamel pens for, I think, the 2 diamonds, and then for Foss. And I got to like hand them out. And that was my one interaction because we never get to see each other. But yeah, I hope we get a season 2 because there's so much more that can happen. But that was a great experience.
Saying the topic of gems, though, if you guys had the opportunity to own one of these gems, which one would it be?
I think it's more for the color, probably, and less about the stone itself, but I love jade. Jade and like greens. I'm a green person. I love greens. Sometimes I'll go out and I realize I'm wearing green shoes and a green dress and I have a green fanny pack and a green headband, and I'm like,
it's my favorite color. Yeah.
It's so good. So jade, because green.
I say diamond because I think they have one of the most interesting designs, but I forgot, which shame on me, I forgot what the black diamond name is. Oh, Bort.
They all have such wacky names.
I know. One of those would be, I think, what I'd like.
This is a question for you, Avery. Let's talk about your role. And this is a huge series, and not only a big role, but also a huge series, just because you look at this anime, you think, oh, wow, what a cute, fantastic anime this is. But then you start watching the series, you're like, oh, this has much of a darker tone. Definitely not for kids. And of course, I'm talking about Made in Abyss, Dawn of the Deep Soul, and your role as Pershka. But let's talk about that character for a bit here.
Yeah, so with Prushka, I had actually auditioned for the original series, didn't get it, which is fine, and I thought I wasn't going to be able to touch the property again, which kind of made me sad. And then Kyle was like, hey, we're doing a movie, we want you to come in and do just like a few hours. And I thought it was just like a background thing. I didn't know who Prushka was. And then I looked her up and I was like, This character is like a little cinnamon roll. She interacts with the main group, and she's just excited to see people her height and her age. And it was interesting to tap into that because I rarely get to play younger, more whimsical characters. She was just in a register in a place I had not ever existed in. And so I was nervous because I wanted to do a really good job. And so I just decided to embrace that sort of childlike quality. And she appears very briefly at the end of, is it the first movie? Is it like Twilight or something like that? So she only has a few lines. It's just like, like Papa and whatever. And again, I didn't think there was anything going to come of that. It was just this little character. And the second movie is all about her. So I was kind of wilding out, and I was really excited because the cast is so wonderful. And these characters have literally gone through like the pits of hell to get here. And I really wanted to interact with Bond Druid. And none of these characters get to interact with him from the role of a daughter, right? So he like sees Prushka as his daughter in a very messed up way. So we'll see at the end of the film. But yeah, it was super rewarding and took me to places I didn't think I would get to act in. Just, yeah.
The spoiler alert again. The father, or should I say adopted father, is a rather of a dick.
That's putting it nicely, yeah. Yeah, he turns me into a cartridge so he can basically ascend or achieve their version of godhood almost. And he does. That scene, which we can talk about later, was so hard to act through because there was no preparation. We don't get to view scenes ahead of time. It was just, you're on the operating table, there goes your leg. How do you react to that? And I was like, oh, good, okay. I haven't had my coffee yet, so that was a fun recording day. I think I knew we were headed for trouble whenever Bond Druid is killed for the first time. If you saw that, like with the big boulder comes crashing down, acting that scene was gut-wrenching. Like I actually kind of like voice cracked. Like as actors, like we act, but then I legit was like kind of teary-eyed. And Kai was like, that was great. We're going to change one line though. I was like, but that was perfect. Do we have to do it again? And so of course you do it again, but I did it. And that just really put me in this like really kind of sad spot. And then I think at the next few scenes were her screaming because there's a flashback. And then, hey, as the meme is, I think she's soup. What is the meme? That she's like a juice box? It's terrible. Brittany Lauda was sending me juice boxes nonstop. I was like, what does this mean? She's like, when do you record? I was like, oh, that's me. So not the best ending.
What do you think of the series itself?
It's hard to say because I don't know how to describe it. I like it, but I don't know that I could recommend it to anyone without like a lot of warning, just because it deals with really complex, dark themes. And I think a lot of people can say that. They're like, oh, this anime deals with some stuff, but like they deal with some stuff and they're kiddos. I like it, but again, massive warning to if someone's expecting this like cute little adventure. It's not.
Moving on to Mysteria Friends, or sometimes known as Manaria Friends, if I pronounce that correctly. Both of you played central characters in this series, and of course I'm talking about Anne and Grea. Again, I decided to mention the series just because I'm releasing this interview in June, which is, of course, as you know, Pride Month. And what better way to celebrate Pride Month than to talk about this slice of life Yuri series? So tell us about your characters.
Anne. She's similar to Yui in a lot of ways. She's goofy. She's really goofy, but she's royal. So she's the royal version of Yui, who's not quite as self-conscious, I think, as Yui can be. Anne was before SNAFU. So it was almost like a taste of getting to like have a character that I could do realistically with little tinges of like excitement and like she's cute. And like anytime she'd say Grea, it's always like Grea. Like I really enjoyed that show. The illustration was really beautiful. The story, the slice of life, like you said, it's just simple and sweet and like lovely and goofy at times. But yeah, I don't know. Anne is one of the other. We're going through my list. She's number 3 on my list of like my little girls.
Grea was funny because she's a dragon girl, right? And I think the audition scene was in the first episode where we're like sitting across from each other at a table, and I always knew your voice because you were like, say my name, it's Anne, and you like get up really big and bright, and it's like I just associated that energy with you. So anytime I was in the booth, even before I could hear what the line was, like I could just imagine your voice being like, it's Anne. And so as Grea, who is very reserved and introverted, it had a really fun dynamic because I felt like you as a character and an actor were always trying to pull out that little bit of fun from Grea. Like, no, you can smile, you can laugh, like it's okay. And so seeing that character evolve and then be playful right along with you was really cool. And what I personally enjoyed is when you would tease the character, because she almost never got it right off the bat. So it's like, I think whenever she has her weird like puberty episode, you like keep a bit of her her skin or something. And I remember you just being like, I'm just gonna hold on to this. And like as an actor, I was like, Scusi?
Hey, Anne, what are you holding behind your back? Nothing at all, really. Do you have my skin? Well, this is just, I thought maybe I would keep it as proof of how much we have grown, or whatever.
Scusi? But like Grea has to be like, and like, you're a princess. What is she gonna say? So yeah, that was a blast just because I never knew what your character was gonna do, and Grea never knew what your character was gonna do. So it was like a fun reactive position, and it felt like improv. Like I was just like, what's Anne gonna do? Oh, bathing suit episode. Cool, let's do it. Like you never know what to expect. It was a blast.
There were multiple times during this episode where like Anne would do something like adorable, but also kind of creepy. And like Kyle would just be there and he'd be like, that's anime.
That's Kyle.
So what do you guys think about that dynamic that dynamic between Grea and Anne? I mean, their relationship, because again, you mentioned earlier, there is a scene where they're sitting down across from each other and they don't know each other yet, but then they start not only being friends, but have this connection. And as you get to see throughout the series, although it's never established in the series that they're more than just friends, you can kind of like feel that way towards the way they were going. I mean, what do you think of that? I mean,
I remember recording it and kind of going with the slice of life. It was really slow and it was really like unspoken. And I think for me, being in it and acting it and listening to Avery, like it didn't feel unspoken. It felt very upfront to me. I was like, of course, like they have a really intimate, beautiful relationship. And I think a lot of people were kind of like upset for a little bit when I read some reviews. They were like, it's bait. They're not actually like having a physical relationship. And I was like, I get that. But also like, there's so many different like aspects of relationships that like, just because there's not an explicit physical relationship yet, it doesn't make it any less intimate, and it doesn't make it any less meaningful or less like valid. I know there's like love and romantic love and like partnership doesn't have to have an explicit physical relationship. Because it was slice of life, there were so many little lovely moments of like Anne at
It's my favorite scene too. They bring up a good point.
Yeah. But like Anne at the piano and Grea comes to her and like there's just so many like they may not have been kissing all the time, but the different ways the show found to show their relationship was just so creative. I really enjoyed it.
I also played it like off of you as explicitly she had feelings for Anne. Like there was no subtext in the way that I was acting that. Like that was someone she wanted to date and to be with. But what's interesting is there's a lot of different dynamics that play out between them. So Anne is a princess. I think it's implied, correct me if I'm wrong on the lore, Grea is something of a similar nature for dragons. I can't be for sure, but there was still that feeling of like inadequacy. Like I definitely baked that into the character of her being like, this is this beautiful princess who is my friend and I have feelings for her. How do I deal with that? And so there's like the cute scene where they go to the dress shop and Anne is like super excited to like dress Grea up. And so, you know, kind of playing into that trope of like Grea's really embarrassed and it's like, oh, Anne. But it's like, I think it was a moment of them being silly and letting loose together, which is really exciting to play. There's a tenderness to their relationship that I think is really nice. And playing an introverted character who struggles with feeling good enough, the scenes where she could shine, like I think the Academy's attacked at one point and she has to like fight off this monster and she's like directing traffic of effectively how to get out of here. It was cool to see that growth and then to have that growth along another character who's dealing with her own stuff. Like Anne is a princess and she, you know, I don't know if it's stated or not, may have to be a queen someday. And so she's having her own identity thing that she's dealing with. And she has a friend in Grea who is someone who is not a part of her royal court and sees her for who she is. And so I really liked being able to do that and just lean into that and kind of let it happen naturally, with anime hijinks to ensue, of course. But that kind of natural progression and tenderness was really nice.
What did you guys think of the story overall, though?
Yeah, that's like my personal favorite is slice of life, even if it feels like it doesn't necessarily go anywhere, which it did. It did go somewhere, and it kind of left it open of like, oh, what's going to happen? Like, what are they going to go to the next, proceed and graduate together and like end up in the same place? Or are they going to see each other again? Does Anne have to go back to her kingdom? And what's Grea going to do? So like, I think the story wasn't necessarily this huge it's an epic, but it didn't need to be, and I liked it for that.
It kind of felt like a little love letter novella. Like there were these little vignettes that is fun because you feel like as a character you're getting to experience all these different things, but in a very everyday life sense. I mean, it's called slice of life, but I liked kind of how chill the story was. There were a few moments that were surprising even to me, again, like the academy being attacked out of nowhere and the weird puberty episode. But I think overall I liked it. It would definitely be something. I don't know if it's a manga or is it based off of a game. I'm not for sure.
It's based off an event within a game. In fact, I don't know if you guys know, but the series itself is actually a spin-off to the main series called Rage of Vermouth, which in comparison to this series is an action-oriented fantasy anime, which has nothing to do with the actual series, because in the original series, or rather the main series, Grea and Anne don't come out in that anime. But in the game, they come out in just one small event that happened for 3 days in the game. And out of those 3 days, this anime came out.
Wow.
And I actually think I got a notification, an email from Crunchyroll. I think Grea is getting her own game. Like, I think Grea is getting her own spin-off game. Wow. I haven't done any research, but I got an email and it was like, Grea, join her on this game. And I was like, oh, cool.
Can you guys recall a favorite scene or character from the series that you guys got to play?
One of my favorite ones to record was the library scene. Because Anne goes from like being pesky and mischievous and like trying to mess with Grea and create this love potion, and then like Grea hides like she's supposed to, and Anne freaks out, and all of a sudden Anne is like, and then it ends in this moment where like Anne is really vulnerable for once. Anne realizes how much Grea means, and then Grea is like, I'm here. I've always been here. Like, it's okay. And Anne's just like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, it's so relatable. Like a moment where you're just like, I'm freaking out. There's no reason to freak out. Okay. Like, that wasn't a very good way to explain that, but it was just a fun episode. And then what was the other one? Oh, the boat confession. That one was just really fun. It was, I don't know, it was a sweet, sweet scene. And then they fell on top of each other. And that was like, it was interesting to record with in the booth with Kyle. Like, there's so many men in the studio and you're usually doing all of these like goofy anime scenes. And they're usually just like,
It's so accurate.
those are my favorite.
The library scene was stressful for me on an opposite end of the spectrum because they were like, can you just like sing a random tune? And I was like, for what? And they were like, yeah, just like hum a random tune. And I need to just call myself out, the most off-key, worst thing you've ever heard. And I was like, okay. And Kyle's like, moving on. I thought, this is it. My career's over. Do I go back? I have time to go back, right? And no. Moving on, next scene. So, nice little Easter egg if anyone wants to hear me sing really awfully off key. I'm trying to think. What was the scene? I think it's when they go to market. I don't know if it's like the second or third episode. Could be the first. Hard to say. But they're like sitting down eating ice cream, and it was just like really cute because I think Grea is just like, she's just bebopping around. Like, I don't even think there was that much for me to do. Like, Kat was very much driving the scenes as Anne, but I felt like I was in Grea's shoes. Like, I was looking around, I was eating my food, I was wearing cute clothes, and it's like, oh, I just like that a lot because I think at one point Anne even says, like, I'm completely in disguise. And Grea's like, I think so. And there's just like a whole crowd around her because I think she's wearing the effect of like a Superman glasses kind of thing.
No one will have any idea who we are. Look, it's the princess! Are you going shopping?
Hello,
Princess!
Lovely
Princess!
weather.
What are you shopping for today?
Princess!
That was always fun. Just sit back and be like, let's see if Anne can get, nope, Anne can't get out of this. All right, I'm coming in. So
It's funny, Kat, that you mentioned the library episode, because that's exactly what I was thinking throughout this entire time we've been talking about Mysteria Friends, is that episode in particular, because I think that episode represents exactly, it is up to that episode that you realize that they have these strong feelings for each other.
Sparking the memory when you were talking about that, and she finds her. I have this very distinct memory of there's this shot where Anne and Grea hug, and Anne like plants her face in Grea's boobs, and she says something. It's something like, Grea's like, "Are you okay?" and Anne's like, "Yeah." And that was like an example of a moment that was just like, I know that feeling, and I know that feeling with like somebody that I trust and am intimate with. And like, I think it was that for me. She started the beginning of the episode like, I'm going to make a silly love potion. Love potion. But she doesn't need it. Like, she has her person. They just have a complex relationship.
So what's a unique or memorable moment that you guys had in a recording session?
Here's a fun one. So recently we recorded Shiki Sakura, which is this kind of, it feels like a Power Rangers type thing. They put on these suits and they fight, and it's great. One of my most recent favorite memories is I just came into that show super pumped and excited, and it was one of the first days. Shannon is there, and he's like, "Do you want to see a transformation sequence?" Whenever they come, they all put on their suits, and I was like, "Yeah!" And he plays it, and this dubstep song comes on, and so me and Shannon and the engineer are just in the studio and at first it's like, "Oh, we're gonna do it," but we did it full dance time for the whole sequence, and it was like, this is great. I don't know, moments like that when you're in the booth and it's just spontaneous fun sometimes happens, and it's like, yeah, it's really great. This is a core memory.
One was for the Reiku, which, to give a brief backstory, I think it's about this new device enters the market where you put in this retainer in your mouth and you can do intense gambling and bets and fights with other people, and if you lose, you kind of, I hate this term, but it's what the anime calls it, their slave. You work under this person, so you as a player can accrue a bunch of other players to be under your charge, I guess. And the only way to free yourself is by having a rival battle with someone else. And my character was ordered to eat silverware. And I was in the booth, again, baby voice actor. And I start making grotesque, I'm eating silverware sounds. We'll let your brains imagine. And John was like, make it grosser. And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, just make it grosser. And I think I just full on indigestion, gross, almost burps. And I stopped myself. I was like, that's awful. I was almost going to do that on mic. And the engineer and John looked at me. They're like, why didn't you? Because you're eating silverware. And I was like, this is weird. Why do I explain to my family this is what I do for a living? So we didn't. Mom and Dad don't know, and they'll never find out. That stays between all of us here. And then, thank you. And then the other was another John show's Release the Spice. And I was playing a character who temporarily, she's this really soft, sweet character, but she's known as the ace in the hole. She's actually, it's a group of spies, and she's known as actually being really talented at what she does, despite being quiet and stuff. And she's fighting under mind control in one of these scenes, and there were no words spoken. It was all nonverbal, but I had to actively struggle against the effects as the person who is the object of my affection is saying this really sweet kind of monologue about I see you and I see your heart and I see who you are. And so the contrast of having to sound like a Frankenstein monster and then hearing somebody I love you was really fun, because John was like, you did great. And I was like, yeah, I'm all red faced, and he's like, cool. So again, how do you describe that to your friends and your family? You don't. But those were mine.
Sounds like fun times, fun times. Can you provide us with the voices of your beloved characters?
I have to think. Okay, I'm thinking of something to say. Sorry. That's not the voice.
You should have some lines for us, man.
Right. Let me think. I almost gave a preview earlier.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh, why are you wearing this? This is absolutely ridiculous. Oh my gosh, why? What? I think. It's been a minute since I did that one. Okay, what else? What else you got for me? Come on, come at me.
She's acting. She's in the acting mindset. Go!
Anne.
This is a good one. Grea? Oh, I was just wondering where you were, Grea.
My heart!
And finally, Yui.
Yeah, hello. Hikigaya. That one's a little bit more like upfront. Like I did that one so much. That one's a lot easier to recall.
And for Avery, Pershka.
Oh, I can't yell into a headset. I'm gonna have to like.
I'll take off my earphones.
No. This is just gonna. She just is just like. She'd just be like, "Hey, I'm talking to you. Let's go on adventures."
Cinnabar.
Boy, howdy. See, I knew logically that's where it would go. My brain is trying to figure out a line that Cinnabar has said at one point. Audience, feel free to chime in. I can't think of a line. To think they'd be on a higher level than me, a gem useless since birth. How impressive. Ooh. You can tell I'm just like Cinnabar. Super cool.
And finally, Grea.
Anne, I was just wondering, do you want to get tea sometime? You got me blushing. Goodness.
That's exactly what we talked about earlier, like the like the pulling back, and Anne's just like Grea. Like,
yeah, she's
I'm coming at you.
Yeah, Anne's out here, and Grea's like always pulling back.
This has been fantastic. It's been fun. Thank you so much for accepting this interview.
Of course. Thank you so much.